If you want to know how to build one of the best full Rei Dau builds, you are in the right place. This build can deal tons of damage because of its 319 raw attack stat or a total of 526 effective raw attack, 47 to 97% affinity, 40% critical boost, and top-notch sharpness management. I will also be breaking down Rei Dau's individual set effects to boost your creativity, especially when crafting meta builds later on. The Silent Flash event quest requires HR 50 for players to participate and also rewards the players with the highest tier of decorations, Asian weapon fragments, and heavy armor spheres. And of course, the main material that you will be hunting in this event is Rei Dau Certificate Gamma. The entire Arch-Tempered Rei Dau event will run from today, April 30 to May 14, so make sure to mark your calendars just in case you can't participate at this point in time. To craft the entire Rei Dau Gamma, here are the entire materials that the set requires, and of course, doubles the amount if you will craft the set's variation. I highly suggest crafting both since this is a limited time event, and this is the only way for you to get your hands on it, for layer armor purposes if you are into this kind of stuff. Just in case you are wondering, a fully upgraded Rei Dau set will give you a total of 411 raw defense, minus 10 water resistance, plus 20 thunder resistance, minus 15 ice resistance, and 0 dragon resistance. I have used the majority of my heavy armor spheres for these testing purposes, but I would highly recommend upgrading it at least to level 5 and no need to max it out for now. Here are the individual gamma pieces. The head, armor caught my attention because of the latent power, weakness exploit, maximum might, and stamina surge. This is going to be my top choices when trying to build mix sets later on or when crafting the best damage builds. Wearing the full gamma sets will grant you level 5 latent power, level 3 maximum might, level 3 stun resistance, level 3 stamina surge, level 2 evade extender, and level 1 weakness exploit, while also giving you Thunderous Roar 2 and Guts or Tenacity. At this point, you are already aware of the majority of the skills here, and I want to focus on latent power, which grants the user 15% affinity and reduces stamina consumption by 50%. This is pretty broken, however, its activation is making it somehow tricky or balanced. You need to wait for 2 minutes when in combat or accumulate a total of 130 points of damage for the latent power to take effect. If latent power activates, you will have 15% more affinity and minus 50 stamina depletion for 2 whole minutes. But the Rei Dau Gamma 4-piece set bonus, Thunderous Roar 2, increases latent power's whole duration by 90 seconds, giving you a total of 3 minutes and 30 seconds, and that is a long duration. But the main caveat of this skill is when your first latent power proc expires, you need to wait for 2 minutes for you to make it proc once again, making this whole thing balanced. The second special 3-set bonus on the table is Tenacity. This gives you 5% additional raw attack but lowers your defense by 5%, which can easily be disregarded, especially since we do not have a real hard content currently. Guts, on the other hand, will also save you from getting one shot if you receive lethal damage when your HP is above the required threshold. You can see this yellow line on your HP bar, which is the threshold. And when Guts proc, your defense will increase by 5% and adds plus 3 other resistance across the board. Moving on to the actual build, and as mentioned, this build will give you 526 effective raw attack, 47 to 97% affinity, 40% critical boost, and top-notch sharpness management. But before that, take your Monster on the Wilds experience to the next level with Mitch Cactus. Mitch Cactus can boost your progress by getting all of the best gear in the game with their 100% ban-free and legit services. Have thousands of golden tickets and armor spheres, or have the best decorations for your builds by getting their modular packs, or have thousands of weapon fragments for you to craft the best Artian weapons. With more than 15k positive reviews in Trustpilot, you are in safe hands. Use my code Samurai for a limited time discount on your first purchase, only for you, my lords and ladies. Learn more details by heading to the description. I'm not saying that this is the best setup overall when it comes to damage, since mixed sets meta builds are still a thing. The purpose of this video is to test the actual power of the whole Gamma set and present it as a working build. Of course, I will be covering the best of the best longsword meta sets soon, so stay tuned for that. If you are looking for the best builds to farm Rei Dau, here are my top recent longsword builds which I use to destroy the current content. As mentioned, we are wearing a full set of Rei Dau Gamma and slot in Counter Charm 3 for the Counter-Strike skill it provides. Nothing changed on the mantle side of things, so if you want to deal highest damage possible, a corrupted mantle is still the best choice. Decoration wise, I am running with 2 critical jewel 3, then slot in mastery jewel 3 on the last weapon slot. The headpiece will have challenger jewel 3 and sheath jewel 1 for the armor slots. Slot in 2 challenger jewels on the arm slots, and lastly, equip chain jewel 3 on the leg slot. Following all of my gear suggestions will grant us a level 5 critical boost for the build to have a 40% critical damage boost. Maybe you are wondering why I put a master's jewel on this build even though we only have a baseline of 47 affinity, which I will dive into later on. We also have a level 3 agitator and a counter strike. So some of you will say to me, "Hey Samurai, I'm not good with counters, so why put the counter skill?" It is because not only you can easily activate counter strike with longsword combos, which grants hyper armor, but casual players can also benefit from this skill as well by getting hit by monsters. You're going to enjoy that sweet plus 25 raw attack for 45 seconds without knowing it, especially since Latin power will also incentivize you when getting hit. Remember, aside from the 2-minute timer of the Latin power, accumulating 130 points of damage will activate the skill. We do have level 3 maximum might for an additional 30% affinity and a level 3 stun resistance. A level 3 stamina surge is a godsend for you to maintain maximum might with ease because of the 50% stamina recovery speed it provides. Evade Extender, Weakness Exploit, and a level 1 Burst are also active on this build. Burst is another source of raw attack, adding plus 8 attack by just pulling off combos. Unfortunately, we can only have level 1 Quick Sheet on this build, but if you're not an EI counter master, it's not that big of a deal. The mentioned Guts and Thunderous Roar set bonuses are also active. If you're getting value so far, subscribe to the channel. Liking the video and engaging in the comments helps me a lot. Join our Discord server and help us build a core group to hunt with, and I appreciate your support. When it comes to overall affinity, this configuration will give you 30% from level 3 maximum might, 7% from level 3 agitator, level 1 exploit gives 5%, and another 5% from your Artian weapon, giving this build a total of baseline 47 affinity without Latin power. However, if Latin power becomes active, you will have a whopping 97% affinity, which is of course ideal. So you'll be relying mostly on Latin power because you can deal huge tons of damage, but the main trade-off is Latin power needs to be active first. Now you might be wondering, "Hey Samurai, my damage sucks when Latin power is not active. The 47% affinity is super low." This may be correct, my dear lord. However, I want you to remember that accumulating 130 damage will activate Latin power as well. You don't need to wait for 2 minutes for the skill to proc. Unless you are a speedrunner god, you will easily proc Latin power by just receiving damage. Don't forget that when you get hit and get knocked back, Counter-Strike will even make you stronger. So let's say Latin power is active, you will have a full 3 minutes and 30 seconds to enjoy its effect. Regular Tempered Monsters quest currently only lasts around 5 to 7 minutes, so you have a good window of dealing damage. On the other hand, I suggest changing Master Touch Jewels to Handicraft and Razor Sharp Jewel if engaging in fights longer than 8 minutes, since the longer the fight, the more Latin power cooldowns you will encounter, leading you to poor sharpness management. But for short fights, Master Touch is suggested. Especially your raw attack can go up to 314 with a total effective raw attack of 526 when all damage skills are active. You'll be dealing a lot of damage, and my damage stats will show that clearly later on. But if you are a very skilled player, then you might want to reconsider the 2-minute waiting time of the Latin power. It's either you prefer waiting for Latin power to be active or just picking our usual meta builds that deals consistent damage all throughout the fight. When it comes to damage stats, I usually test the damage of my builds by hitting the damage 21 times and getting the average, while Agitator and Latin Power are active. Foot Bobs and Mega Demon Drag are also applied to the test as well. Performing the Crimson Slash 1 and Spirit Blade combo, we can see that the DPS range is around between a whopping 2600 to 2700 plus after several test runs, which is pretty nuts but rather expected. In this setup, your raw attack goes up to 319 raw, and that is a lot. When comparing this build to your usual longsword full damage setups, not to mention I'm only hitting 2400 to 2400 plus damage range in my previous strongest longsword build. But the biggest difference is that a usual full damage longsword build will deal consistent damage compared to this Rei Dau build, which waits for Latin Power to take effect before dealing the most damage possible. It will boil down to your preference at the end of the day. I will also be updating my staple longsword build soon, but what if you haven't got the chance to participate in the recent festival event? These videos will get you up to speed, and I will catch you on the next one.